Welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Laurel Tucker.
So thank you so much today for just giving me your time and educating me on your peripartum cardiomyopathy experience. What year and how old were you when you were first diagnosed?
It was 2010. It was just over, I'm trying to think, 2 weeks ago, 12 years ago. So February 3rd was when my daughter was born. And sorry, what was the other question?
When were you diagnosed?
So I'd been having high blood pressure. And so I'd gone into the doctor a few times and they decided to induce me. It was my first pregnancy. And my blood pressure was high, but it was not in the red zone. It was just high for me. Mm-hmm. So they put me in the hospital to induce, and I didn't really progress. Nothing happened. So then I did a C-section. And after the C-section, my iron was really low. I had a lot of factors that just didn't look good. So they kept me in the hospital a few extra days. I was there. I went in on a Tuesday and came home on a Sunday. And so my daughter was born on a Wednesday. So that's about 5 days.
That's about right. That's what I had after my C-section was 5 days. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so they did a few blood transfusions, thinking that would help with the iron, but I just didn't feel good. I was really swollen. I would fall asleep mid-sentence. Yeah. And I don't know if I don't know which medication that had anything to do with. And then so I came home and I was a little postpartum-y. I kept crying a lot. I was really, really, really swollen. And I just didn't feel good. So finally my mom insisted, she lives a mile away. She insisted that she come stay with us. Cause I think everybody thought I was a little bit crazy. And my mom had 3 babies, but she didn't have C-sections. Mm-hmm. So she came and
What state are you? What city and state? Okay, you're Georgia. Is it Atlanta, Georgia, or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I
Is your hospital Emory?
No, I was Northside, the baby factory. That's where all the babies are born. So my mom came and stayed with me, and I woke up during the night convinced that there was a mouse in my wall. I could hear it. I was like, Mom, I woke her up, and she's like, why are you waking me up? We have 30 more minutes before the baby's going to wake up again. And I'm like, listen to that. So we're digging around the room, trying to figure out where this mouse is. And it turned out it was my chest. And it was me breathing. It was the fluid on my lungs. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's you. So, and I called my doctor a few times, and he even had made a comment at one point that something to the effect of, I wasn't the first person to ever have a baby. Having a baby's hard. Yeah. And so I cried so much, and the nurse, I'd really gotten to know her, and she randomly lived nearby. So she stopped by to see me, and she said, I think you should go back in. So on Tuesday, she got me an appointment. I went in to see him, and he's like, hey, you need to go right back to the hospital. We need to get you over there. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, let's just go over there and we'll talk some more. And he said, do you want me to call an ambulance? I'm like, why do I need an ambulance? And at that point, I couldn't even really walk from one side of the room to the other without being completely winded. I couldn't carry the baby carrier. And he put me in the hospital, and I didn't know what was wrong. I thought it was pneumonia. I've heard about people having surgery and then getting infections and all that.
Well, yeah, with fluid comes infection. And we were, being swollen is such a huge, symptom. Some people don't have any swelling. Yeah. For me, it sounds like we blew up with a lot of fluid, yes, which is often mistaken as nutrition and weight gain. But weight gain is a lot different than fluid gain weight.
Yeah, I have stretch marks on my feet from the fluid.
Right. I mean, that's common. That's so common to hear. It's a pattern statement that you just said. Because, yeah, okay. I mean, we're literally expanding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But kept thinking, after a certain number of days, and then once they got my iron worked out, that was going to get better. And we just heard this raspy noise. And so when I called the doctor and told them that was going on, even though, I had said for a couple of days, like, I just really wasn't feeling good, he called me in there. So they sent me over to the doctor or to the hospital. And I was so big, they put me in the, they sent me to the maternity wing, and they said, well, when's your due date? And I said, when's my due date? I had my baby a week ago. Like, she's right here. And I was just so big. So they put me in like what do you call those rooms? Where they put me in a room where they would put somebody on bed rest. So I'm in a room, and they start, doing all these tests, and they don't tell me anything that's going on. So this guy comes in and he tells me he's my cardiologist. I'm like, cardiologist? You're in the wrong room. Like, I just had a baby. And they're like, no, you have congestive heart failure. Your heart is working at, like 13% capacity. And by then they had done an echo and an MRI with contrast. And I said, well, it's time for me to nurse. Like, I need to get out of here. I need to go home. I need to see my baby. And they're like, no. We need to make sure you're going to make it through the night. Like, we're not concerned about, we have nutrition. Like, we will send down some formula samples. And I was like, what is this? Like, how is this even happening? I mean, and then from there, it just, what happens. It just snowballs into, the door shutting on one part of your life and opening on the next.
Absolutely. We didn't, it's not like you planned on having a baby. You didn't plan on, being diagnosed at a life threat, like that, and having the rug kind of literally ripped from underneath you. That's, that was one of the things that, like, you have to be good with change in like life in general to be able to like move forward with something like this. Like, you lose so much, and the most important thing that, women lose, and you lost and I lost, and why we're talking about this, is time. Like, that's how we make our memories. And, and we missed, there's certain types of things that were taken because of, time being, not being diagnosed early enough, not, and it just continues.
Or being ignored, or just have it written off. Absolutely.
Blown off. Women having to advocate because we don't have a diagnosis, anywhere. They say it's one of those things where it's unfortunate that women have not come as far as we have liked, that we are discovering with women's heart health during pregnancies. So it is one of those things where you do have to change. You have to go with the flow with this, because if not, the worry, the fear, the depression, and all of that, it just takes up more time. And and time is all we have, and, and I always say, like, we can, there was a quote in the TV show that I worked on with Patricia Arquette, Medium, and there's a quote where it's stated, and I'll never forget it, as I was like even reading the script, time is priceless, and you can spend it any way you want. And, you choose to spend it today with me and to educate others on the awareness that, it take a little, there's a whole long thing about that, but that was just like a little piece of that. And I take that because, time and the now is what we have. And so, like, I'm trying to move forward, creating this, developing this pregnancy movement with one woman at a time, which you are part of, so this way women's lives are not diagnosed at a life threat and ignored. And at this point, when you're talking, you have your baby next to you. You have all the symptoms. At what point were you able to go home and be with the family and kind of, figure out how you're going to navigate around this diagnosis?
So I was in the hospital probably 4 more days after that. So like the first day, was almost a week. And then the second stay was 4 or 5 more days. And that was just getting the fluid off of my heart. The doctor said, we're going to try some things and it'll either work or it won't. And for me, fortunately, the Lasix really helped. I was able to once I got the fluid off, my heart bounced back, but I was already in kidney failure.
Yes.
When I got to the hospital, it was kidney failure. What happened
when I had kidney failure. And they wrote on my discharge paper, she is not ill. She has a UTI. They said I had a UTI, which they mistake. They do that. Like they mistake that as a kidney failure for UTI because 7 days later I had cardiac arrest. So that's interesting that I'm glad that you mentioned kidney failure because I never brought that up yet. That's your kidneys fail before your heart.
And I think, and I'm not a medical person, so I may be wrong, but I think kidney failure is an easier test to take. So, you can diagnose that through blood work. And so when I got there, I was showing signs of kidney failure. Clearly I had fluid in my lungs and then on, my heart. But, so once they got the fluid off, my heart bounced right back. I left on a beta blocker and an ACE inhibitor plus the Lasix. And I left. So I was so swollen. I wear a size 6 shoe and my feet were still
perfect 6. I was actually a foot model. Perfect size 6.
Fun.
Yeah. Giselle Bunchen, I was her foot double. That's how I got my foot in the door in Hollywood. Actually, I was living in Philadelphia. Funny. Yeah. My roommate, and a long story short, my roommate got an audition for a soap opera and I was going to actually the University of Pennsylvania. And she's like, come with me. And I was like, okay. So I went with her and I ended up like going to like Red Rock that doesn't exist anymore and met a woman and she's like, you got great feet. If you go to set tomorrow, come at like 4 a.m. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, and if you don't get the job, you'll get paid like, $75. If you get the job, then you get paid like, it was like $2,000. And I was like, what? I was like, done. Okay, done. So I go there and there are all these women lined up and then they choose my feet. And it turned out it was a Giselle Bunchen, the Victoria's Secret model. She was doing a shoe line in Brazil and filming in Los Angeles. So I was her foot double. And I'll never forget. Awesome. Yeah. And that's how and then I got my foot in the door that way because I ended up on the TV show Cold Case because the location manager was that. And he's like, oh, it branched and grew from that day forward. I ended up obviously coming out here and doing the show, Cold Case. But at the time they lined up the girls, they chose my feet. And I'll never forget, she was having, she was eating a carrot in front of the trailer. And I just like walked right, because I walk up to like whoever. And I just said, and I was like, you're my face double. Just like that. Just to see what she would say,
That's awesome.
She kind of looked like that, like, like, huh?
Like, wait a second.
Wait. Well, and I just walked away. She got it. She got it. But, and by the end of the day, I was like, get it? Haha, I'm your foot double. She's like, oh yeah.
So I'm your face double. That's fun.
So when you mentioned that, but it was like that totally went off.
No, so it's funny when I had gone back to the hospital because it was February, it was cold here. I had borrowed a pair of my sister's shoes And like, so she gave me these awful, like old lady, she's like, well, these are kind of stretched out. So she wore like a 7.5 and like, they were still tight. So she gave me these shoes and I lost so much weight and fluid in the hospital that like, they had to go get me new clothes. They had to get me like new shoes because I'd shown up in these like enormous clown shoes, maternity clothes. And then I left there 20, 30 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
From that fluid.
Yeah. Exactly. My feet were I have photos and I love to incorporate your photos on this because if you were to see, even like, you know, even like what I looked like, I was just so swollen. I was so big. And I took a photo of when I was pregnant. I was like, before I was pregnant, it was like 105 pounds. Then I was holding my baby like in a pool and I'm sitting there and I don't know why I'm smiling because that was the day that I had a cardiac arrest. I was over 200 pounds of fluid, like literally over 50 pounds of fluid. And then you see me at like the gym and I literally could not believe that you can't notice fluid. So when I was saying a size 6, you and I have a perfect manufactured shoe size. Once you're, you know, your feet get swollen and stuff like that. Yeah. It's like, you know, our feet no longer fit in our shoes.
Right.
And so my feet are no longer what they are. Like they were, you know, manufactured shoe size. I mean, completely. I cannot believe that when there is so much fluid and a woman is literally saying, ow, I am seriously hurting. Like why there is no common sense behind, you know, what women are going through. Because I know that I'm pretty articulate about how I feel. And I was articulate. The entire pregnancy, I was articulate. I mean, I've been a yoga dancer. I'm sure you were trying your best to advocate for yourself. Well, and I worked with 2 other people that were pregnant and they had due dates near me and they just didn't seem to have the same symptoms, but it was my first. And the other thing that looking back was strange was that I outgrew my maternity clothes. So it was like, I got so big, but it wasn't that like I needed a bigger top or something with a bigger like drawstring around the back. It was my legs and my pants. All of that was getting bigger. Yeah,
so
everything.
Finally near the, I had
all
to go
around
buy a pair,
swollen face.
Yeah. So I went and I was at work one day and I spilled something on myself because, you know, pregnant people are clumsy. And I had to go to Target and just buy something new. So I bought a pair of sweatpants that were drawstring and I wore them to work my last like 3 weeks of pregnancy. And every night so they were like bootleg and I ironed a crease into them. I washed them every day, ironed a crease into them and tied them below my stomach and tried to make them look like dress pants.
Yeah.
And I wore them into the office and I was like, this is just weird. Like this is something I've never heard about with pregnancy that like you get too fat for the pants. But I wore them and then, you know, fast forward, it made sense. You know, I did have a subsequent pregnancy and nothing really went that way. I did get swollen, but I was like, oh, okay. So now my maternity clothes fit the right way. Like my face isn't swollen. My hands aren't swollen. My feet, my legs, like I can see my knees.
Did you feel like when you were swollen that like for me, I was painting my son's mural on his wall for his nursery. It took me, well, I couldn't finish it actually. Oh. But I would take about 10 minutes, just 10 a day. Because I couldn't do it any longer. My feet would get so swollen and they would almost get numb. And I remember the ankles would get, and then I'd have to elevate them immediately. I mean, it was just
and the
unbelievable.
Elevation thing never really helped. Like I came home and I kept doing and people kept saying, you know, oh, elevate. And I'm like, well, it's not a broken ankle. You know, it's
right.
It's fluid. And I noticed like I couldn't, like I was so big, like I couldn't drive my car. So like I started getting really nervous about driving. And I am short, like I'm 5'3", but like my whole body, you know, and I have short legs.
I'm 5 feet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like I couldn't reach I had to sit far enough back to allow room for my stomach.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't reach the pedals. So I started getting nervous about that. And at work, they started, like one of the security guards was like, it's fine if you park in a handicap. And I was so mortified again, because I was pregnant with 2 other girls and they didn't seem to be having these issues. Like they weren't waddling in. Yeah, both were taller. But I felt like it just looked like I just kind of let myself go, or just, kind of nailed it on the pregnancy.
This is what I look like. I don't know if you can see.
Yep.
Can you see how, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, I can, little bit.
I don't know. Hold on. My husband usually does this well.
Now, how long ago was yours?
So this was me the day I coded.
Okay.
This was me right before pregnancy. I was dancer, yoga, dedicated since I was 4 years old. Very, very healthy. This was me 3 months after giving birth to my son. That's when I had the stroke, cardiac death, the coma, like done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is me actually March 2020, right before COVID.
Okay. So how old's your son now?
He's now 5. So
Okay.
as you can see, this is what you probably went through.
Yes.
So
but mine was more on like, it was at the tail end of my pregnancy, and like they should have caught it in the hospital.
Absolutely.
Especially being, now I will say, I have one of the few doctors that has encountered it before. Not my OB, but I ended up with an amazing cardiologist who specializes in pregnancy women. What's the other high blood pressure? Preeclampsia. He specializes in that. He has a whole team. So he was awesome. And he
that's just what we were. That's why we needed the SFLT-1 and the PIGF, which stands for cardiotoxic fluid, and the placenta growth factor test that Dr. Fett talks about all the time. When you're preeclampsia, that's the test. And that's what we had here.
And so Dr. Padoff came over so he was back then, he was at St. Joseph's, which is now owned by Emory, which you mentioned earlier. And so he walked across the street to Northside. They consulted with him, with a high-risk doctor. They all came in, looked at me, talked about it. He told me about it. He's like, this is really rare. There aren't many people that have it. But he was great. And when we decided, years later, I told him several times, we really want to try to have another child. And he was like, no, you don't. And he was there for all of that. So he helped me do a lot of tests to have a second baby. He kept telling me, he's like, I don't want you to do this, but I want you to know the risk factors if you do. And so my husband went into him and said, look, we're not asking for permission. We just we want to know what the risks are ourselves. So he was on board. He did, stress echoes. He did, all kinds of tests. And so we had my son 4.5 years later, and I didn't have any for the most part, I didn't have any kind of relapse. I did have some swelling. They did keep me in the hospital a few extra days. And the last day my BMP numbers went up. There was something fuzzy on them, something that just kind of caused a red flag. So they kept me in the hospital longer. I had better care because of it. They did an echo of my heart every single day. My ejection fraction improved while I was pregnant with him. And, I did not have my annual echo last year, but it has been 12 years since I had my daughter. And I had one during COVID. I should have had one again last October, November. And I just skipped it, just given everything else that's going on. And I feel fine. So I don't have a lot of the lingering issues that other people do. I would say that I had the PTSD for a while. I had the nightmares. I did end up with, I don't know if you know what C. diff is. I had a gut infection that put me back in the hospital for another week.
My father had that after he had his gallbladder taken out. I'm very familiar with it.
So I picked that up in the hospital. So was back in for another week. It was awful. Like all of it was, I mean, and that was the worst pain I'd ever been in my life. And today my daughter has,
I always felt for my dad. I mean, it's unfortunate because you get it at the hospital.
Yes. And they try to tell you and they tell you, it could be this, but they don't want to admit fault. It's like picking up a staph infection at the hospital.
I know. It's awful.
And my coordination of care was really difficult. What? Yeah. I mean, it was terrible. The baby got it. I got it. The dog got it. And that was really, really hard because, she was still really young. I was on a lot of medication. I nursed through all of it. And, her life has not been easy. Like she seems normal, looks normal, but, she was diagnosed with autism last year at age 11. And, I wonder how much the pregnancy, the medication I took for my heart, the medication I took for the C. diff, the blood I wonder if any of that affected it. We'll never know. Does she have
that's why, like, we're all studies, and we are all our children, because we're talking about this. We have now become a study, and our children are now studies, and our children are the ones that we need to create this change for, making this mandatory for our grandchildren. But our children, and my son's 5, and literally observe him and I'm looking and like, trying, and he's doing so good. But at the same time, it's like, how could he have not, you know what I'm saying? Because we're full of fluid. They're drinking our fluid. Like our fluid is infected. They didn't do anything. So half of their pregnancy, or at least a month of their pregnancy, did it get in their lungs? Like these are the things that like go through my mind. And I do have an EKG and a BNP, and I would like to get him a lung stress test. And I talk about it a lot before I'm taking him, because he doesn't want to get poked. But I tell him, if I get him to do it now, and I waited because of COVID, and you do it with your daughter, and she knows her BNP number, NT-proBNP test, every year, she must know it. It will save her from many other fluid diseases that cause those diseases, cancer, dementia.
She has a severe peanut allergy, and a couple years ago, it was just so bad that like we didn't send her to sleepovers, and she had some anxiety too, which we now realize is, part of being on the spectrum. But her peanut allergy was so severe. We just were always afraid if she went to camp, like just any kind of exposure to peanuts, she would have potentially have anaphylaxis. So we entered into a study with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and we had this great allergist. And, I put my medical history on there, and I talked to him about like, did I cause this? And he's like, we don't know. We don't know what causes anything, but, I have this crazy medical history with this just super rare heart condition.
We do know what causes. Fluid causes suffocation to the heart. We know what causes.
Well, so now she was able to be part of this trial where they did OIT therapy. They took they took blood that I don't know what they took it for, but I signed away all of her, just like whatever you need to study it.
Exactly.
And now here she is 2 years later. And she, for the most part, the trial was successful, and we have it up to, a peanut a day is her daily dose, in milligrams. She takes 300 milligrams of peanut powder a day. to keep from being allergic. They did all kinds of blood work. We signed away everything we could for genetic testing. Maybe she has some kind of gene deletion. And when, her cells began creating something, and that went wrong in me. And so maybe part of that all.
Well, yeah, it's all connected, ears, nose, and throat. It's all connected. The placenta growth is so important on the mother's health. Mm-hmm. So the fact that there's no diagnosis available really ever at all, there is, but it's not applied. That's what I'm trying to say. Right. We do know what it is. It's the SFLT1 and the PIGF and the NT-proBNP test, and these are the tests. But there is a mutation gene, and it is determined with that mutation gene blood test. And it is determined, and these are the tests that we know that we want our children to have, to know if they have that mutation, heart gene. And there is prevention. So unless there's awareness, and there's the willingness to be educated on a more level of the study, which is, our vessel, our bodies, and our children's bodies at this point moving forward in 2022, because it's one of these things where we're able to talk about it. We're creating not only just the description, but the, what do I want to say? By taking on like this leadership, we are creating like the foundation of what should have been applied a long time ago.
Yep.
I mean, there has been awareness for over, and there's, it's not a hidden secret. They've been aware for over 20 odd years. So the fact that
I wouldn't have even known about this group except, see if you follow this, my sister's mother-in-law. So my sister's husband's mom worked at Emory, worked in cardiology. She was an RN, and she started saying, I've heard of this. So she connected it from Northside Hospital and St. Joseph's Hospital. So she tied it together to patients she had seen at Emory. And she said, there's a group out there. So she helped me find the Facebook group. And that's how I really got involved, started meeting people. Erin Martino, she was like the first one in the group that I met. She, introduced me to
Kelsey Cruz. She's now 20. She was diagnosed, or she had to get a new LVAD, bad, but she got it at Emory.
Okay.
And so, yeah, she got pregnant at 18, got like a new heart at 19. And then, she went back there. Like if you go on her Facebook, she's back at Emory today.
Okay.
So, they're doing like, testings for something. So it's like, we're all studies, I wonder if there was a correlation that your mom heard, that maybe it was Kelsey, because that's who has been caring for her health there, is at Emory.
Could be. I mean, my sister's mother-in-law retired probably 2 years ago, and my daughter's 12, so it's been a long time. I don't know if there would be over.
You found this group how long ago?
I mean, I had a BlackBerry, so that tells you how long ago it was. Oh. I was on my BlackBerry in the hospital. My sister's mother-in-law told me about the group, and I found it on Facebook on my BlackBerry.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
before I even left the hospital.
All right. So it's been known.
Yeah.
It's been known. And that is what's so heartbreaking. That's why I started, these conversations, because if we don't talk about them, then there's never going to be change.
Right.
And I really do appreciate, you coming through today and, just talking with me and sharing your story, and in hopes that we've taken another step in, basically solving that women are stronger together, coming together, as opposed to individually trying to scream from the rooftops.
Right. And I mean, and that's where I took it. I took, I really wanted to have a second child. So I went and I started working with the Heart Association, and I started raising money, and they offered me a position. I worked there for a couple of years thinking, I could change this. I could help raise enough money.
So if you worked for the American Heart Association, I mean, and again, like, I have no blame on anybody. I just want to move forward and talk. But they have, they're admitting that they've known this for over 20 years. How come they haven't been educating the, all the different areas in the wheelhouse of pregnancy?
Yeah, it was not a good experience. I didn't like working there. I was working in the fundraising arm. The different arms don't talk. They love the fact that I was a survivor and could share my story, and that helped people raise money, but that gave me no access to research or the advocacy.
But they haven't even featured in over 20 years anything about the NT-proBNP test, anything about women's heart health, women's heart wellness. And it breaks my heart because I have women, and I don't post a lot, but I have women that don't make it, that I'm literally trying. I'm talking to labor and delivery. I won't even mention the hospitals this time. I'm mentioning all of this, and labor and delivery have zero awareness. And it's not just one location. It's all over the United States of America. It's all over. They don't have any awareness. And then women are diagnosed in the ER when it's too late. And so, the American Heart Association, okay, fine, you're admitting that you have known this for over 20 years, and women that I've been interviewing that are recovered for over 27, 30 years. And then I have girls that are coming to me that are like 23 years old with the exact same experience, with the exact same concerns, with the exact same advocacy, with the exact same suffering, with the exact same miracle story, or in a little different way, because everyone is different. But there's been no change. And then they say, oh, we have been aware of this.
And my personal opinion on it, like, I can't speak for them. Like, I hated working there. It was a terrible experience. All of it was bad. But what I can say is I think it's too small. I think it's too obscure. I think if there was
but it's not, though. What it is it's not rare. It's rarely diagnosed. It's not uncommon. It's just uncommon for the medical community to apply this life-saving medical information. And especially with the big associations, they're the ones that should have advocated. So there is nobody to really blame, but is there? Women have been dying since the beginning of time. I mean, we have artificial intelligence hearts. You can't get a NT-proBNP test mandatory for women, but you can have a home test called SNAP Pro BNP for felines that look like a pregnancy test. That's insulting, because it's insulting women's intelligence. One, it looks like a pregnancy test. Two, it's for animals, not humans. And three, it's been around forever. And the American Heart Association has known about this. Well, apply it. And it literally says that the test that looks like a pregnancy test for feline, that is to protect heart failure and heart risk with early diagnosis. And it says it right there. It's like, well, why aren't we as important as a feline cat. Now, I have a Precious Boo Boo. His name is the Rares, and I love my Apollo, my dog. But it's like, I love my son, you know, like he's my baby. I need to be alive. You need to be alive. Your children need to be alive. It's like, apply it to not just animals, but to humans as well.
Take it and even into your OB's office. Like, we all do a glucose test, right? Like, how hard would it be when they're taking vials and vials of blood for them to do a BMP on everybody?
Right. But I'm having girls being denied the NT-proBNP test during pregnancy. And actually, actually one of the women on the board of UCLA and the Barbara Streisand Heart Association, her daughter just had baby, and she can't find anybody to give her an NT-proBNP test to her daughter, and she had heart failure, the mother. So she wants to know. I want to know. And so I said, okay, well, you need to go to an obstetrician, and if the obstetrician won't give it to you, then go to Dr. Axelrod in Agora Hills. You know, he'll do it. You just refer me. You know, this is pitching him as well as a doctor that has awareness of peripartum cardiomyopathy, because not many doctors have the awareness. He does.
Right.
So if you're in California and you need, you know, he's good. I think he only takes motion picture pension and health plan, unfortunately. Or maybe he does expand insurance, but.
Well, I'm so glad we did this. I'm glad we were able to talk. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. I love talking. It's been a long time since I've talked about any of it.
If you have any other follow-up things that you may have missed, just send another interview. And just schedule another interview. And then maybe your BMP numbers and your EF when you were in the hospital, like get that results and compare them to what they are today. That would be really helpful for women who are just diagnosed like yesterday and hearing somebody who's, you know, a decade, you know, evolved, you know, because, you know, we hear that you can fully recover and what we've been through. If you're saved, if you're treated. So you are a living proof to all women that you can, you know, you can live through this. If you're treated and you have the awareness. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time today, and you know, many blessings, and I will talk to you hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Have a great day.